Hello, and welcome to our ninth podcast episode. The epic battle for control of the desert planet Arrakis begins. I'm Timothy, and I am here with my old friend Thomas. Today, we're going to discuss a film called Dune. Dune is a 2021 American epic science fiction film directed by Denis Villeneuve about Paul Atreides' journey to the desert planet Arrakis, where he becomes embroiled in a war for control over its valuable resources and mysterious native population. So, Tom, did you enjoy Dune?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it, Timothy. On one hand, the visuals were absolutely stunning, and the production design was top-notch. The film captured the essence of Frank Herbert's novel quite well in that regard.
Interesting take on it, Tom. Now, I, for one, really enjoyed Dune. As someone who has read the book multiple times and is also a big fan of science fiction films, I found this adaptation to be very faithful to the source material while still being accessible to newcomers.
Well, I think that's where we differ, Timothy. You see, as someone who prefers more character-driven stories and has never been a fan of science fiction in general, I found myself struggling to connect with the film. The pacing felt a bit slow for my taste, and there were moments when I felt like the exposition was taking over the story.
I can see where you're coming from with that, Tom. However, I believe that the slower pace allowed the audience to fully immerse themselves in this unique world that Herbert created. And as for the exposition, I think it was necessary to properly set up the complex political and social dynamics of Dune's universe.
Well, I suppose we can agree to disagree on that point then, Tim. Speaking of characters, what did you think about Paul Atreides' portrayal by Timothée Chalamet?
I have to say, Tom, that I thought Timothée Chalamet did an excellent job portraying Paul Atreides. He captured the character's inner turmoil and growth quite well throughout the film. Paul is a complex character with a lot of responsibilities thrust upon him, and I feel like Chalamet handled those challenges admirably.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, Timothy. While he did an adequate job with the role, I found Paul to be rather bland and uninteresting at times. He lacked the charisma and depth of character that I expected from someone who is supposed to be the central figure in this epic tale.
Interesting perspective on it, Tom. Now, let's talk about some of the other characters for a moment. Rebecca Ferguson's portrayal of Lady Jessica was absolutely spot on. If you ask me, she brought both strength and vulnerability to the role, which is essential considering her character's complex relationship with Paul and her involvement in Bene Gesserit's mysterious plans.
I have mixed feelings about Lady Jessica as well, Tim. On one hand, Rebecca Ferguson did an impressive job acting. Wise. But on the other hand, I found her character to be somewhat underdeveloped compared to Paul's or even some of the other characters in the film. Her journey from a dutiful Bene Gesserit acolyte to a conflicted mother figure felt rushed and not as impactful as it could have been.
I can see your point there, Tom. Now, let's talk about some of the other characters that we thought were particularly well done. For instance, Stellan Skarsgård's portrayal of Baron Vladimir Harkonnen was truly chilling and despicable, exactly how it should be. His character was a perfect embodiment of pure evil, and I felt like he stole every scene he was in with his incredible performance.
Well, I have to agree that Skarsgård did an excellent job as Baron Harkonnen, but it almost seemed like the filmmakers were relying too much on his villainous presence to create tension and drama. His character felt a bit one-dimensional at times, lacking any real depth or nuance that could have made him a more compelling antagonist.
Interesting point of view there, Tom. Now, let's move on to discuss the plot of the film a bit more. As I mentioned earlier, Dune follows Paul Atreides as he becomes embroiled in a war for control over Arrakis and its valuable resources. The intricate political machinations and power struggles between The various factions were masterfully handled by Villeneuve, providing plenty of drama and suspense throughout the film.
Well, I have to admit that the political intrigue was one aspect of Dune that did hold my attention for most of the film. However, there were times when it felt like too much emphasis was placed on world building, at the expense of character development or emotional depth. It almost seemed like the filmmakers were more concerned with setting up future installments in the franchise rather than focusing on telling a complete and satisfying story within this particular adaptation.
I can see where you're coming from with that point of view, Tom. However, as someone who has read the book and is familiar with Herbert's original vision for the series, I believe that this film did an excellent job at setting up future installments while still telling a compelling story within its own right.
Well, we can agree to disagree on that point then, Tim. Overall, while Dune had some impressive visuals and performances from certain actors, I found it to be quite underwhelming in terms of character development and emotional impact. The pacing felt sluggish at times, and the exposition heavy script made it difficult for me to become fully invested in the story being told.
I can see your point there, Tom. Now, let's talk about something that I felt was particularly well done in Dune, the soundtrack composed by Hans Zimmer. It perfectly captured the epic scale and otherworldly atmosphere of Arrakis, adding another layer of depth to an already visually stunning film.
Well, I have to admit that the soundtrack was certainly impressive from a technical standpoint. However, it sometimes felt like it was trying too hard to be epic and dramatic, almost drowning out some of the more subtle moments in the film. There were times when I wished they had toned down the music just a bit to allow for more emotional nuance and intimacy between characters.
Interesting perspective on it, Tom. Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about some of our favorite moments from the soundtrack. For me, one of the most memorable tracks was the duel, which played during Paul Atreides' confrontation with Fade Rautha Harkonnen. The intense and brooding score perfectly complemented the action on screen, adding to the tension and drama of the scene.
Well, I have to agree that the duel was certainly one of the more memorable tracks from the soundtrack. However, there were moments when I felt like the music was almost too overbearing or predictable. For instance, during certain scenes depicting the Fremen people's way of life on Arrakis, the music seemed to lean a bit too heavily into stereotypical exotic sounds and motifs, which took me out of the moment rather than immersing me further in the world of Dune.
Interesting point of view there, Tom. Now, let's talk about some other aspects of Dune that we thought were particularly well done. For instance, the visual effects were absolutely stunning throughout the film. The sandworms looked incredibly realistic and menacing, adding a sense of genuine danger to Paul Atreides' journey on Arrakis.
Well, I have to admit that the visual effects were certainly one of the strongest points of Dune. However, there were times when I felt like they were used excessively or in a way that didn't always serve the story being told. For instance, during certain action sequences or dramatic moments, it almost seemed like the filmmakers relied too heavily on flashy visuals rather than allowing the performances and script to carry the weight of those scenes.
Interesting point of view there, Tom. Now, let's move on to discuss some other aspects of Dune that we thought were particularly well done. For instance, the production design was absolutely breathtaking. From the ornate palaces of the Imperium to the desolate landscapes of Arrakis, every detail felt meticulously crafted and authentic. This attention to detail helped immerse viewers in Herbert's richly imagined universe.
Well, I have to agree that the production design was indeed one of Dune's strongest points. However, as someone who prefers more character-driven stories and isn't necessarily interested in the intricacies of world building or politics, I found myself somewhat distracted by all the visual splendor at times. It almost felt like the film was trying too hard to impress us with its set pieces, rather than focusing on telling a compelling story with well-rounded characters.
Interesting point of view there, Tom. Now, let's move on to discuss some other aspects of Dune that we thought were particularly well done. For instance, the performances by the ensemble cast were all top-notch, with standout performances from Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides and Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. Their chemistry on screen was palpable, adding depth and emotion to their characters' complex relationships.
Well, I have to admit that the performances were certainly one of Dunn's strong suits. However, as someone who prefers more intimate character studies over large ensemble casts, I found myself wishing that we had gotten to see more development for some of the secondary characters. For instance, Stellan Skarsgård's portrayal of Baron Harkonnen was chilling and memorable, but he wasn't on screen nearly as much as I would have liked him to be.
Absolutely, Tom. Now let's talk about some of the other actors and their portrayals of the characters in Dune. One such performance was by Dave Bautista, who played the role of Glossu Rabban Harkonnen, a brutal and sadistic character. His physical presence on screen was truly intimidating, and he managed to bring an eerie charm to his character that made him all the more menacing.
I have to agree with you there, Tim. Dave Bautista's portrayal of Rabban Harkonnen was indeed chillingly effective. However, as someone who prefers more nuanced and subtle performances, I found myself wishing that he had been given more opportunities to showcase his range as an actor, rather than relying solely on his physical presence to convey Rabban's villainy.
Another standout performance in Dune was by Zendaya as Chani, a member of the Fremen tribe and Paul Atreides' eventual love interest. Her character undergoes quite a transformation throughout the film, going from a naive young woman to a strong and independent warrior. Zendaya brought an authenticity to her role that was truly captivating, especially in scenes where she displays her growing fondness for Paul.
I have to say, Tim, your point about Zendaya's performance as Chani is quite valid. She did manage to bring a sense of vulnerability and strength to the character simultaneously, which isn't an easy feat. However, I still feel like her character could have been fleshed out more thoroughly in terms of her backstory and motivations beyond just being attracted to Paul Atreides.
Finally, we come to Josh Brolin, who played the role of Gurney Halleck, a skilled warrior and close confidant of House Atreides. His character serves as both comic relief and a source of moral support for Paul throughout their journey on Arrakis. Brolin's portrayal of Halleck was spot on, capturing the essence of the character from the novel while still making him feel fresh and engaging on screen.
I completely agree with you there, Timothy. Josh Brolin brought a sense of charisma and charm to his role as Gurney Halleck that was quite enjoyable to watch. His interactions with both Paul Atreides and the other characters in the film helped lighten up some of the more intense or dramatic moments without detracting from their impact on the story. In conclusion, Dune is a film that will undoubtedly divide audiences due its focus on world building and political intrigue rather than character development or emotional depth. While it has its flaws, it cannot be denied that the visuals and performances by the ensemble cast are truly stunning. The film does manage to capture the essence of Frank Herbert's novel while still being accessible to those who have not read the source material. Overall, while I may not have enjoyed Dune as much as you did, Timothy, there is no denying that it is a visually impressive and thought-provoking piece of science fiction cinema.
Absolutely, Tom. Now, let's talk about some of the differences between the novel and the film adaptation of Dune. As you mentioned earlier, the focus on world building and political intrigue was a hallmark of both the book and the movie. However, there are several key aspects that were either changed or omitted from the film version. One such example is the role of the Bene Gesserit sisterhood in the story. In the novel, they play a much more prominent role in shaping events on Arrakis through their manipulations, and secret plans. The film adaptation, while still acknowledging their presence and influence, downplays this aspect in favor of giving more screen time to other characters and plot lines. Another notable difference is the portrayal of Paul Atreides himself. In the novel, he comes across as somewhat aloof and detached from human emotions due to his rigorous training by the Bene Gesserit. This makes his eventual transformation into a compassionate and empathetic leader all the more impactful. The film adaptation, while still showing Paul's growth throughout his journey on Arrakis, seems to emphasize his humanity from the outset, making it easier for audiences to relate to him. Lastly, we have the pacing of both the novel and the film version of Dune. The book is notorious for its slow burn storytelling, with long passages devoted to world building and character development. The movie adaptation, while still fairly faithful to Herbert's source material, has streamlined certain aspects of the narrative in order to fit into a more conventional runtime. This means that some subplots or characters might have been given less attention than they were in the novel.
I have to say, Timothy, your analysis of the differences between the novel and the film adaptation is spot on. The changes made by Villeneuve seem to be aimed at making Dune more accessible to a wider audience while still staying true to its source material. However, as someone who prefers a slower pace in his storytelling and enjoys delving into complex characters and their motivations, I found myself wishing that some aspects of Herbert's novel had been given more screen time or attention. Nonetheless, it's undeniable that Dune is an epic tale filled with memorable characters, thought-provoking themes, and stunning visuals. The film has sparked a renewed interest in Frank Herbert's original work, while also standing on its own as a visually impressive and intellectually stimulating piece of cinema. In conclusion, Dune is a cinematic experience that will no doubt leave a lasting impression on audiences regardless of whether they are familiar with the novel or not. While there are some who may find fault in certain aspects of its storytelling or character development, it remains an undeniably ambitious and captivating work of science fiction that is sure to spark discussions and debates for years to come.
Absolutely, Tom. Now let's talk about some of the cultural impacts Dune has had since its release in 2021. One such impact can be seen in the resurgence of interest in Frank Herbert's original novel. Not only have sales of the book increased significantly, but there has also been a renewed discussion about its themes and ideas within various academic and literary circles. Additionally, Dune has sparked an interest in other works by Frank Herbert, such as his subsequent novels in the series, as well as his standalone works like The Sanaroga Barrier or Whipping Star. Furthermore, the film's success has also had a notable impact on the world of science fiction as a whole. It has reinvigorated conversations about the genre and its potential to tackle complex themes, while still providing an engaging and visually stunning experience for audiences. Dune's blend of political intrigue, ecological concerns, and philosophical musings has inspired numerous discussions among fans and critics alike about the relevance and importance of science fiction in today's society. Another aspect worth mentioning is the film's impact on popular culture. The visually striking costumes and sets have already become iconic, with cosplayers and fan artists around the world creating their own interpretations of characters like Paul Atreides or Lady Jessica. Additionally, the film's soundtrack has received widespread acclaim, further solidifying Hans Zimmer's status as one of the most influential composers in Hollywood today. Lastly, it is worth noting that Dune's success has also had a significant impact on the industry itself. Its massive budget and ambitious scope have pushed the boundaries of what is possible within the realm of science fiction filmmaking. This can be seen in other upcoming projects like The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power or Avatar 2, both of which seem to be attempting to emulate Dune's grand scale and attention to detail.
I completely agree with you there, Timothy. Dune has undoubtedly left a lasting cultural impact since its release in 2021, from inspiring renewed interest in Frank Herbert's original novel to pushing the boundaries of science fiction filmmaking and popular culture. Denis Villeneuve's adaptation has certainly made its mark on the world. And with the promise of a sequel already greenlit and plans for additional adaptations in development, it seems that Dune's cultural influence is only just beginning. In conclusion, Dune serves as a testament to both the enduring power of Frank Herbert's original vision and the creative potential that exists within science fiction storytelling. Its themes of political intrigue, ecological responsibility, and personal growth resonate with audiences across generations and continue to inspire conversations about our own society's values and priorities. As we look towards the future and the promise of more Dune stories on both the big and small screens, it is clear that this seminal work will remain an integral part of popular culture for years to come.
Absolutely, Tom. Now, let's wrap up our discussion on Dune by sharing our final thoughts on the film. For me, while I didn't personally connect with it as much as some others might have due to my personal preferences in storytelling and character development, there is no denying that Dune is a visually stunning and thought-provoking piece of cinema. The performances by the cast were top-notch, and Denis Villeneuve's direction perfectly captured both the epic scope and intricate details of Frank Herbert's original novel. It's a film that demands attention and rewards multiple viewings with its layered storytelling and thematic depth.
I have to agree with you there, Tim. Dune is indeed a film that demands the viewer's attention and engagement. While it may not have been perfect in my eyes, its ambition and commitment to its source material are truly admirable. It's a cinematic experience like no other, one that pushes the boundaries of what we expect from science fiction films while also remaining faithful to its roots. As someone who appreciates well-crafted stories and complex characters, I can't help but respect what Denis Villeneuve and his team have accomplished here.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Dune, Tom. It's been a pleasure discussing the film with you, even if we did disagree on certain aspects of it. For those of you who are watching or listening to our discussion, we hope that it has sparked some interesting conversations and thoughts about the movie and its impact on popular culture. As always, we encourage you to comment, subscribe, and like this video if you found our discussion engaging or informative. We look forward to hearing your opinions on Dune and other films in the future.
Indeed, Timothy. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope that everyone who tuned in has enjoyed it as much as we did. Remember to share your thoughts and theories about Dune with us in the comments section below. Until next time, happy viewing and discussing.